Test 1, 2, 3.
Okay, I got you.
Test 1, 2, 3.
Test 1, 2, 3. Test 1, 2, 3. Test. Okay. All right. So you want to go back to New York?
We're still in New York, yes.
Let's go back to New York.
We
had
never
gone-
left.
We did.
We did. We
went
went
to
to
Los
California,
Angeles, and then we went to
Well,
Columbus.
you'd have to ask a question like any incidents in New York or something like that. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah. Okay. Let's take a minute and we'll go back to New York.
Grace.
So, were there things that happened in New York that you recall that you had to deal with?
Yes. One thing when I was transferred into the counterfeit squad in New York, I was still working in an undercover capacity at the time. And you'd go out on counterfeit bus, meaning people supposedly who had counterfeit trying to sell it or whatever, or there had been a scenario to set up a buy, and I was involved in that. In one particular case, whereby I was the undercover agent, and the arrest went down, and the perpetrators were handcuffed, and I was handcuffed also, and the arresting agents started beating on the arrested perpetrators, and I saw that. That was the first time I had actually ever seen that, and I said, even though I was handcuffed, I turned around and said, well, why don't you take the cuffs off if you want to fight them and let them fight honestly instead of beating them and hurting them the way you're doing. And they didn't say very much about that. They just, they did stop though. And, but I understood later from others that that's what they did all the time, was to punish people that under arrest, to beat them. And when we got back to the office, nothing really was said. But the next day, I was taken pretty much out of the counterfeit squad, or really out of my responsibilities for going out and working the cases on the street. And I was assigned to work the property, meaning seized weapons that we got off of perpetrators, guns. And I worked closely with ATF at that point, just scribing about the weapons that were received and sending them to the armory to be melted down or whatever they want to do with them to dispose of the weapons. That only lasted about a week because I think the number 2 official in the office got wind that I wasn't working with the squad and came and moved me out of the squad and put me in the intelligence squad. But the thing about them beating prisoners, they did it a lot of times. I got from other agents. And they even, for me to witness them slamming a guy's face into the hood of the car. That's not what we're supposed to do on the street. That's not how we make arrests. But these guys did it often, and many reports of that, of them beating prisoners. That's about what I'll say about that.
About New York, okay. Well, we went from New York to LA and then to Columbus. So Columbus was just a few years. I think you were there for a couple of years, 2 years?
Yeah, going on 3 years, yes.
3 years that you were in Columbus. You then became, your rank was special agent.
In the rank in Columbus was special agent in charge. I ran the office. I was the boss in Columbus. I ran the office, and I had agents under me. And we talked about one case, I think, where about the shooting occurred, and that was in Columbus. That's where we were until we switched around again.
Right, yeah. So in Columbus, how big was your staff? Yeah.
We had 8 to 10 agents there, including myself. Not many agents, and they generally had road districts, where about some would work the greater Columbus area, but others would have road districts in the state. And the boundaries went all the way to Pennsylvania, all the way to West Virginia from Columbus, Ohio, and it's far north to Cleveland. So we had enough agents to cover that area if we wanted to, and we did try to cover it and do the best job we could.
You know, I didn't ask you this, but now, and I know it's the federal government, but did you always have adequate resources for everything that you did?
We had adequate resources when it comes to administrative staff in the office, But when it comes to agents, sometimes you could be slack. That's why you see with the one case that I requested help from Cincinnati. I told you about that case already. I think it's already been recorded because I knew we wouldn't have enough agents to adequately cover that for the safety of everybody involved.
And another question I didn't ask you, but training for an agent, I know, takes some time. When someone is brought on, is hired by the service, typically how long does it take to train
Well,
an agent?
it takes about, I say, total of 12 weeks, 6 weeks in two separate schools. One school is involved with the laws and dealing with the Secret Service. Another school is dealing with the aspects of being an agent, dealing with arrest, dealing with protection, dealing with intelligence. So you go to two separate schools. One's a Treasury school, one's a U.S. Secret Service school.
Ah, okay, I didn't know that. I didn't know they
Department
made
of
that
Treasury,
distinction.
one, U.S. Secret Service, one.
Well, now, Secret Service is under Treasury, isn't it?
They used to be. They're not anymore. They're under the Homeland Security now. When I was an agent, they were under Treasury, yes.
Okay.
Well, considered Treasury agents, yes.
So you made the move from Columbus to Birmingham, and that was 1988.
1988, I was assigned to the Birmingham office with a promotion to be the special agent in charge, meaning I would run that district. And upon being assigned to that, I became aware that there had been a threat on my life from somebody inside that office. And that was given to me by a reputable person who knew what had happened in the city of New York and when the statements were made. But it came to me from the investigation office, AD Investigations, Assistant Director of the Secret Service office, that this had happened. And they asked me, they said, well, you know that there's been a threat. And I said, yeah. I said, I heard that. They said, well, it's reliable, a threat. And they said, do you still want to go to Alabama, Birmingham, and be the boss? And I said, sure, I'm still going to Alabama. And the date that I arrived in Alabama was on my birthday in August 5th, 1988. I arrived in Birmingham, Alabama to assume the duties of the special agent in charge.
The threat came from within the department?
Yes.
You mean the Columbus department?
No.
The local department?
No, it came from it came from an agent in the Alabama office who made the threat while in New York City on a temporary assignment. If Grayson gets this, he's probably going to be involved with an accident with my gun in the office.
No. Okay.
Pretty much similar to that.
Yeah. When something like that happens, is there an internal investigation around it?
There should have been, but I don't know if there was. And if there was, they didn't tell me. But they did tell me that there was a threat.
Right.
That came directly from a gentleman that's still alive that was in that office. He was the SAC of that. I think he was a SAC, special agent in charge in that office. But that office is run by an assistant director, not by a SAC. They have 3 SACs in there, in that office. So, you know, you have the SES offices, the 15 offices, and the 14 office. And one of them will cover the resident agencies also. So they have 3 people in the position of SAC in that office.
That's it. Okay. So Birmingham was 1988. You left Columbus. How did you find Birmingham as a city?
My first day on the job, I think the agents in the office said, we want to take you out and show you your car and give you your car and the keys. And so we left the office. I'd never been to the garage where they had the cars or anything. It's my first time going there. And they showed me a car. It was a brand new, pretty much brand new Cadillac. I think it was kind of bluish green in color. And they said, that'll be your car. And I immediately told them, no, that won't be my car. I said, I told them, I said, I'm not a pimp. I said, I want a black sedan. And I said, put plenty of antennas on it. When I come there as the boss, I want them to think that I'm the boss of the Secret Service, not a pimp.
When you said,
And I don't know why they would get me that car. It didn't make sense to me. Maybe they seized it. I don't know where they got it from. We wouldn't ordinarily buy a car like that. You know, I can't see a SAC driving a car like that.
when you said put a lot of antennas on it, was that for the function?
Antennas represent that it's probably law enforcement, radios and things in the car. So the ones that when you make that sound, whoop, whoop, going down the road, swinging that antenna. That's that antenna making that noise.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So how big was the staff in Birmingham?
Birmingham staff, I guess I had an assistant, and I had probably about 7 more agents at least in the Birmingham office.
Okay. All right.
And they generally had road districts, and maybe 1 or 2 would work. The intelligence cases could be worked in Birmingham, but other cases like threats and things like that might be out in the counties.
So what was the extent of your district?
The district ran all the way from Huntsville, where you come into Alabama, and went all the way south to Selma, Alabama, to Anniston, Alabama, across 20, I guess that's 20, or 10, one of the two. It's 20. It's 20, across 20, and then across all the way to Georgia was mine, and all the way to Mississippi. All of that was the Birmingham office's district. So Selma was in my district.
So would the other
I had another office in Montgomery.
That's
I had an office in Montgomery, and Montgomery handled that southern part. That was theirs. Yeah.
While you were in service, did Birmingham deal with any racially motivated crimes committed by citizens in the state?
The Birmingham office had a case for a gentleman that was wanted across the United States, who had a reward out for him, bond and a reward out for him, who had done some things, I think, dealing with counterfeit currency. And as soon as I got there, pretty much, and it was said that they thought he was in the Birmingham district. And so the investigation by the agents in the office located him at a residence in Birmingham. He was in Birmingham. And so we set up a sting operation or whatever so we could go out and try to arrest him. Was set up. It was an arrest situation because we had a warrant for his arrest. So they went in to arrest him. And I thought, for the first time since I hadn't seen these guys work, I said, I'll go in the office and listen to the radio chatter, see what's going on. So I was in the office while it was going on. On the radio, it sounded fine. And then I heard that they were bringing the suspect in, meaning the guy that we were looking for and had the arrest warrant for, but they were bringing in 2 other people. I said, okay. I just wondered who these 2 other people were. And well, remember, we're looking for a white male. So they brought in 2 black people. One was a woman, one was a man, and both of them looked like they'd been beat up a little bit, both of them. And the woman didn't have shoes on, and she's bleeding, and the man was bleeding. And then they brought in the suspect who we were looking for. Looked like he was getting ready to go to church. I said, something's wrong with this picture. And one of the agents said, well, boss, they fought. I said, you got those guns and they fought? No. I said, let the woman and the man clean up, take them home. We wanted him. And that was the end of that. I said, tomorrow I'll probably talk to the U.S. attorney about this. I said, this doesn't look right, and I'm not going to have it in this office.
This was the furthest south that you came in your career. Do you recall the racial breakdown of your office and how many?
Well, there was one black agent in the office. I think he was at school when I started there, if he was there. Maybe he came after I got there. I don't really remember about that, but there was just one. All the agents were white agents, and they had been there a while, all of them. All of them had probably been there 6, 7 years, maybe more. And that was the component of that office. And that was the component of my Montgomery office too, all white. And I didn't understand why, with such a population of blacks, that all the agents were white. It just didn't ring true. But I had an administrative staff, and of course, the ladies that were working were ones that had been trained, and they were white. But I didn't see that. That's fine. And matter of fact, those women did a heck of a job, and they did everything I would ask them to do. They did it. I had no problem with that. But the makeup of the office was wrong, and I even told the ASAC, I said, we need to try to do better with this, maybe to hire somebody. So I tried to hire a couple of people from UAB. None of them really worked out, and they didn't work out because they might not have been competent agents at some time, It didn't work out because they couldn't pass the test. And I gave them every opportunity to pass the test. I even told them where they could go get a copy of the test at the library. I said, if you can study it, study it. I said, and then we'll give it to you again even. You don't, just because you fail it once doesn't mean we can't give it to you again. But no, that never worked. I tried hard to bring in blacks to the office. It just did not work. And that just did not happen. And the recruitment in the southern office in Montgomery, the gentleman there wasn't going. I don't think he even tried to bring in blacks. But you know, that's just how it was.
Typically,
It would be reflected in his evaluation.
typically when agents are brought on, do they have to come in with law enforcement as a
They do not.
background?
No. I mean, one thing we used to say was you can have any vocation that you want, but they didn't want theology. They said they'd take a hard look at a guy that came in with a theology background.
Why?
I don't know why. I don't know. I have no recollection why. But we had hired guys with theology backgrounds. I know guys that have been in seminary that got the job, a couple of them, and both of them were black. But they switched to law enforcement. You know.
Yeah, I thought that, I always thought that to go into the service at that level, whether it be the Bureau or Secret Service, that a requirement of law enforcement experience was a part of everything that you had to do, but that's not the case.
No.
Mm-hmm. Okay, all right.
I mean, you want the best agents that you can get, and you certainly want people that can pass the test and are competent enough to pass the test. But, you know, I heard from an old sergeant, I guess, in PD. He said, well, do you want your guy to pass a test, or do you want your guy to solve murders? There's a difference. Some guys just have a knack of working in law enforcement and can do the second part of it. And you have to distinguish that with a panel. Nobody gets in without going through a panel. And the panel has to agree that the guy either makes it or doesn't make it, and recommend such to the SAC to be sent in to headquarters, whether the guy makes it or not. And if the SAC doesn't agree with it, he can re-interview the guy himself or the woman and see what he thinks about it. He's the final judge, would be the SAIC.
So does the panel consist of the people who are already in the office?
It does. It consists of agents that are already in the office. You have to form a panel, yes.
So you mentioned an office in Birmingham and Montgomery. Was there an office in Huntsville and Selma?
There's not but there's a road district for Selma and a road district for Huntsville. An agent had that in his responsibilities, yes. You cover the whole state. I mean, everything. Yeah. So if I said it was those 6 guys during the week, they're out. They come back in on a day and do their cases. Yeah.
Well, how was Southern Alabama, which would be the Mobile area down there?
They had a separate guy covering that. That was his office down in Mobile, and he ran Mobile. He didn't run anything else. Just Mobile, just that port area and Gulf Shores, maybe.
I see.
Yeah.
I see.
Because you had a U.S. attorney down there, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I forget his name now, but they had a U.S. attorney down there that ran for senator, congressman or something. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So how long were you in Birmingham? About 3 years, right?
I left Birmingham in 1991, I think.
Yeah, that's right. In Washington.
Right when the war started, the Gulf War. Yeah.
And you made the move from Birmingham to Washington, D.C.
Yeah, I did, because when I was in Birmingham, they allowed me to take French, because I wanted to go to Paris to work in Interpol. But I took the French. I guess I passed the French, and I bid it on France to go to Interpol. And I thought I was getting it, because they're the ones that sent me to school. But at the last moment, they said no, because of what we've now established as the Grayson rule, you cannot go to Interpol. I said, the Grayson rule? What are you talking about? Well, the Grayson rule is you have to be a top manager in Washington, D.C., or a manager in Washington, D.C., before you can have an overseas assignment like that. So, which was a lie. That's not true.
Is that a formal name that they've given to a rule, or they just
That's what they told me.
that's what they told
And the guy that told me that is still alive. In case somebody wants to verify it, I would tell his name. But he's the one that called me and said, no, we call that the Grayson rule. I said, that's a heck of a rule to get me right now.
Well,
After I've gone to take the classes and everything.
typically, if they name something after somebody, it exists somewhere in writing.
Well, maybe it is. I don't know. I didn't see it. They just told me we call it the Grayson rule. So I didn't get to go. It's pretty simple. But they said, but you can bid to come back here if you want. So they gave me opportunity to bid on the number 2 job, I guess, at the vice president's detail, or to run a headquarters division worldwide. I took the worldwide job.
Yeah.
I took the worldwide job in Washington.
Before we leave Birmingham.
Okay.
So I've read about Interpol, and I think I know what it is. But why don't you talk a little bit about exactly what Interpol is? I know you didn't get the position over there, but what is it that?
Interpol is an investigative intelligence position, and it deals with all the countries of the world. And it deals with people that are felons in those countries that commit crimes and try to go over the jurisdictional limits or boundaries of countries and to try to escape punishment. And Interpol tries to find those people and bring them in and arrest them if they can. That's what Interpol is set up to do. It's for international crime. People that's roaming around doing things in different countries.
And
they put warrants out for their arrest, and they generally get their man.
Yeah, I've read stories about Interpol as an agency.
Mm-hmm.
And,
I think it's gotten weaker over the years, though. I'm not sure if it's as strong as it once was because they want to weaken it for some reason. I don't know what that might be. I know Russia would want to weaken it if they could.
Could be the politics of international situations, and especially in Europe.
Well, we don't have agreements with all countries for extradition of people. So, you know, when you have Interpol who thinks they can do it everywhere, that probably interchanges in that somehow, yeah.
So, 91, you're in Washington, D.C.
Yes, I went back to Washington.
Mm-hmm. So you get the position that is the
Special agent in charge of the Forgery Division, and I took it. The Forgery Division was worldwide. It went all over the world because we have people all over the world. We send money all over the world. Secret Service is part of the Treasury Department. Treasury Department is pretty much a disbursement of all funds that go all over the world.
So with that being a national and international office,
and
well,
it's headquartered. The people that would work for the Forgery Division are in different places in the world because I could call them and ask them to look at this or look at that and see what they get. We have people in other countries, meaning the U.S. Secret Service.
Right. So that's what I was going to get.
And they're assigned to embassies and consulates. Mm-hmm. That's how they get in those countries. They have to have a reason to be assigned there.
Right. And so at that level, did you begin to see more African Americans in those positions globally?
Not initially, but you know, while I was there, it appeared that they were starting to send more blacks. They'd send blacks internationally already, meaning that they were in like places like Puerto Rico or something like that. But now they're sending them to Nigeria because there was a lot of crime coming out of Nigeria. So they put a task force in Nigeria, financial crimes. And then it just started ballooning, and people would be going everywhere. And one of the young men, black guy who worked for me in Chicago, ended up in one of the Slavic countries. So yeah, they put them everywhere now. I mean, they don't have a choice. Right. You know, we have people. Everybody don't want to volunteer for things like that. You know.
I guess by being in D.C., you had to deal with D.C. is built around politics, and mm-hmm. So did you have to deal with the politics of government?
Well, you would, because we had one operation that I started. It was called TRIP, Treasury Recipient Integrity Program, TRIP, and it went all over the world. The U.S. Army, the U.S. Navy, and whoever else was sending checks to Navy units that were gone. They were sending checks to people who had been Rangers in World War I, and they were dead. All these people were dead. But the reason I came up with that is because there was a train in Sicily that kept getting robbed every month. I was seeing the report. I said, oh, they robbed it again. But nobody reported missing checks. Generally, when checks are gone like that, somebody's reporting that the person didn't get the check because people want their money. It wasn't happening. Not only was it not happening there, in certain cases, it wasn't happening in the Philippines, and it certainly wasn't happening from the U.S. Navy position because those fleets had left where they were at. They weren't there anymore. We found all this out through our investigation. The government was wasting money in all these places for people who were dead. So we started that integrity program and started sending people to all these countries, and everybody that was getting a check, if we didn't find them and couldn't find them, they stopped all those checks. They saved billions of dollars in money and funds going out from the government. The military said, don't tell anybody about this if you don't have to, because they knew it was their fault. And others said the same thing. It was a huge program. But that meant that the people who worked for me in Washington for the first time got to go out and travel. The young clerks and stuff, because they knew about checks and they knew how to work that back and not get the money, but certainly know what had happened, and there it was. It was just to be seen. And there was a reward issued for that in probably 1996, I think, or 97. $10,000 for the person supposedly was responsible for the program. They gave it to a white boy by the name, I ain't gonna give his name. They gave it to him though, $10,000. He called me on the phone that day and he said, Grayson, thanks. You gave me this money. I said, what are you talking about? They said the TRIP program, they gave me $1,000 treasury reward. $10,000 treasury reward. I said, they gave it to you? He said, and I didn't have a damn thing to do with it. I said, no, you didn't. I said, but you know what? They knew that. $10,000. They did it to me like that twice. They gave another $10,000 award to a female agent down there, an attorney, who they gave it to her instead of giving it to me. They told me I was getting it. I didn't get it. $10,000. That's twice. So I don't know who else that happened to twice. But I should have got the one for TRIP. Not only that, a guy by the name Paul Rakowski should have got it too because he was the lead agent on it. He did all the work. I didn't do all the work. I was just the boss. Just gave a little instruction. But it went all over the world. He did a heck of a job. You know what they gave him? Nothing. Nothing.
Being in D.C. means that you're there where
Headquarters division.
Yeah, where all of the aspects of federal government will converge around almost anything. But so was there cooperation between the Secret Service and the FBI, particularly? There's two arms of law enforcement at the federal level.
That's like oil and water. And always probably will be like oil and water. It's just, the cooperation is no. When I was in Columbus, now you got to go back to Columbus, okay? When I was in Columbus, the FBI seized counterfeit money. Counterfeit money violation belongs to the U.S. Secret Service. We knew they had the money. We asked, could we copy that money to see what they had, or would you give that to us so we could run it through our headquarters to see where it might have come from, or is it a new note or whatever? They refused. I said, well, just go ask them again. They refused. I said, let me say this to you. And I told my agent, his name was Bill Montgomery. I said, I want you to go downstairs to the bureau, tell them that you want the money. If the boss down there doesn't give it to you, you arrest him right then. He said, fine, boss. I said, he went down there and told the guy, he says, if you don't give it to me, Grayson says, I'm going to arrest you right now. He gave him the money. Because he knew he was in violation. That's ours, not theirs. And I wasn't having it. I said, we'll give you a description of everything you had, but we'll take it and send it to our people in Washington. That's where it's supposed to go. I told him to arrest him. So now you understand, maybe? It was that simple. In Chicago, another incident. My guys are on the street working cases, criminal cases. You know who's tailing us? The FBI. Telling my guys. I went over to the FBI headquarters in Chicago, up on whatever street it was on, Dearborn or whatever. And I told the guy in charge, I said, listen, we've got guys working on the street, and your guys are tailing them. And I said, I'd like it to stop. Somebody's going to get hurt. I said, my guys are on just like your guys. Somebody's going to get hurt. And the guy told me, he said, we're not tailing your people. I said, really? I said, who the hell license plates are these? He stopped it. They were telling us. There's going to be a shootout. We had a guy in our office that done shot 3 or 4 people and killed them. And he was on that squad. He was a hothead, though. I had to get rid of him.
Well, we're going to go to Chicago next. I just wanted to kind of wrap up D.C.
Yeah, I didn't know where we was at. We talking about bad people. We talking about the FBI. Yeah. And that's what happened in Chicago with the FBI.
Yeah, and so I was asking about the cooperation.
Washington, D.C. and cooperation.
Yeah, right. Well, because, I mean, I've heard that so often that FBI doesn't like to be cooperative, even on the level of...
They wish they were Secret Service agents. Secret Service agents started the FBI, 3 of them. They started the FBI. They came from Treasury. Maybe they don't like that aspect of it. I mean, I don't know. The G-Men, remember the G-Men? Those were Treasury agents, not FBI. Three guys from the Secret Service started NCIS, which exists today. That was the Secret Service starting that. But yeah, the cooperation in Washington, I mean, the Bureau had their building. We had our numerous buildings, but at high levels, they're pleasant to each other, okay? But when it comes to working the street and working cases, is information shared as much as it should be? Maybe not. Maybe not. You know, I mean, I can't attest to that in all aspects, but maybe not. You know, but I tell you this, the Bureau, and they might not like it, I mean, is that they might not be there, and they might really might not be there when the action goes down, but you hold a press conference. You want to see them, they'll be at the press conference. That's how that works.
Well, I've heard that the uncooperativeness, it comes all the way down to the local level. The level of just, police in the city.
Oh, yeah, the cops don't really care for the Bureau. They tell you they do. They're not telling you the truth. The Bureau's tough. They come in and they just take over for those certain people. They wouldn't take over for us, not with our own jurisdiction. They had to get out the way. We're pretty sensitive about that. But the Bureau is big. The Bureau has 10,000 plus agents. We had 5,000. You know, Customs might have a few thousand, but the Bureau's huge. They're everywhere. There are a lot of jurisdictions, but they want more. They want to take all the jurisdictions. They want to be involved in a lot of things, but a lot of the agencies have made a lot of mistakes over the years, and to include the Secret Service, everybody's made some mistakes, But the cooperation is what helps you really get through the day sometimes. Cooperation. When everybody's on the same page. Just like in Cincinnati. I'll tell you about that SAC that we had. He went to a meeting in Dayton, Ohio, and he was supposed to go out with an arrest team. He didn't have to go out with the arrest team. He should have sent somebody. But he went out with the arrest team, and a gentleman showed up on site of the arrest team who wasn't at the meeting. The SAC in Cincinnati shot and killed him. So that's important. You shouldn't be where you're not supposed to be. He didn't know who the guy was. The guy had a gun. He shot and killed him.
He was an agent.
But he was a policeman.
Oh, he's a cop.
He was a cop.
Wow.
He got killed.
Yeah, that is terrible. That's terrible. So, 91, you're in D.C. 93 is when you made the move to Chicago.
Well, I don't want to leave D.C. just yet. We're trying to tell the federal government and who was the black, what was he, Attorney General here recently? I forget his name. He worked for Holder.
Holder, right.
So Holder is a federal judge. I sat in that courtroom many a day. Holder's in there holding court on us, and we on us and ATF when the black agents are saying they're being disrespected. We're saying we can't get promotions, we can't get this, we can't get that. Holder held that in his desk until the day he left. He wouldn't do anything about it. And that was Eric Holder. He just held it, wouldn't do anything. But before Obama left office, President Obama, he said, yeah, we're going to do this. And all those guys got paid for all the things that had been happening over the last 20 years. They finally got a hearing that Holder wouldn't give them. He just held it in his desk. You know, federal judge don't have to move on nothing. And he didn't. And that was Holder. I was in the courtroom because I was assigned in Washington. So I went to hear what was going on. And he wasn't budging. And he didn't, none of my time when I was there. But it finally happened with Obama when Obama said, you take that out of your desk and let him go on that. Because that was for all those black agents. And some of them had done died. But when they settled the thing, the people who were involved initially, like, well, quite a few people, but one of them, especially a gentleman by the name of Don Tucker, who was the special agent in charge out in Phoenix, Arizona. Heck of a guy, but he's dead now. And a lot of other Secret Service agents are dead. They didn't get to participate in the gratuity of the money. All these guys got $100,000, and most of them hadn't done anything. They just had our notes from what we were saying was happening for 10 or 15 years. I got up and spoke at a conference in Northern Virginia about racism in the Secret Service. I told them just how I saw it and the things that had happened to black agents and the way they were treated. They had a black female agent in Texas who the guys didn't even acknowledge was an agent and had them bar her from going back to hear the evidence and everything that was going on in one of the offices in Texas in a police department. So if the agents disrespected her, you know the cops gonna disrespect her. And that's exactly what happened. You had another female agent, black, in Detroit, who got her crotch grabbed by a white agent in the office. That ain't right, but that happened. And they finally did something about it years later. And the punishment they gave the guy initially was nothing, or it was nothing done about it. Assignments, educational opportunities, promotions. They would go into a promotion board and they would have the Rolodex from the boss. The Rolodex of the boss had everybody's picture on it. That's something that shouldn't be allowed and was not supposed to be allowed, but they did it. I caught them doing it once when I was in Washington, and I went to the guy that was supposed to do something about it, and I said, listen, they got a Rolodex in there right now, so who you think's not gonna get promoted? He did nothing about it. That was wrong. I won't call him out, but he didn't do anything about it. I reported it. It was my job to report it. All he had to do was go tell him to get the Rolodex out of that office, and he had the authority to do it. Didn't do it. Some people don't want to make waves. You got to make waves.
Right.
And that's why a lot of dislike for me. I made waves. When I first got to New York, I didn't tell you. They cut nigger in my desk. Cut it in the desk. And the boss wanted to get I said, no, don't get rid of the desk. I want to see that every day. That was wrong. I know who did it. I told you about the guy that could ride the bull but couldn't lead the herd. He's the one that did it. They knew who did it. Nigga. Okay.
Okay.
Now where you want to go? I'll go anyway. You got my temperature up.
Well, this is a good segue to Chicago. Then, let's go to Chicago. So, '93, you make.
I go to Chicago. Okay. Well, I think I'm going to Chicago. So when they said,
I know that you said that you were trying to get the Interpol position from
yeah, but they made me go to headquarter division. Mm-hmm. They made me. They didn't make me. They promoted me. When I say they promoted me, it was a lateral promotion. I kept what I had. I didn't lose nothing. But they gave me a worldwide organization to run, and I ran it efficiently. And I told you about the $10,000. I mean, we did a heck of a job there. But anyway, okay, I'm going to Chicago, or I think I'm going to Chicago. When they heard that I was coming to Chicago as the SAC You know what happened? One guy said, who had retired, said he wanted to come back and get his job back. I heard Grayson's coming, but he was the boss. You can't have two bosses. If he gonna come back, that means I ain't coming. They told him no. I ain't gonna give his name, probably embarrass him, but it should embarrass him. But he was denied the opportunity to retire and then come back just because I was coming in SAC. But that should tell you the flavor up there. That was the flavor. He was gonna leave his family and come back in the Secret Service to bar me from coming to Chicago. But they said no. Before I went to Chicago, remember, I was a valedictorian of the place down in Virginia for leadership. He probably couldn't give a speech, okay? I gave the commencement address, but whatever. But I went on and went to Chicago, but I knew what I was headed to, okay? When I got to Chicago, when I got there, reception was okay. But I kept trying to get a key for the office. I said, I need a key so I can get in. I come in early sometime. And the office manager said, well, yeah, we're trying to get you one made, but we can't. I said, okay. So that went on a week. On that Friday, I went in and I said, listen, did you get my key? Key for the office, simple thing. She said, well, no. I said, well, give me your key. And she did. I said, now you try to get one, okay? Thank you. And that was it. And from that day, she hated my guts, no doubt about it. But that was okay with me. You know, I didn't want to start off like that. That was up to her. How you gonna not get a boss of the office a key to the door? Think about it. Is it because I'm black? Probably so. Probably so. And they wonder why I didn't trust this woman. I had good reason. I could see what she was. She was a racist. It's okay, because a whole bunch of them up there were racist. And I found that out later. I didn't know it. They weren't racist to me when I first got there, but their actions spoke louder than their words. I found out. But I still was the boss, and I carried on for a number of years before it really affected anything. We were number one office in the country. In the country, in everything. And everybody wondering how you did it. You got less men than they have in LA. You got less. You might have 100, but you got less than they have in LA. And one other office, I think, I might have had less, Miami maybe. But New York. And your stats are better than all of them across the United States for a 3-year period. And they said it's because I'm working them too hard. That's what they said. That's what the inspector said when they came to do an office inspection. You're working them too hard. No, I just tell them to do their job. You know, like I do my job. And that was Chicago. I mean, but it was politics, not only from that, but from the mayor's office and everything. You had politics. You know, from the chief of police, not really the chief, he was okay, but the deputy was, and today is, he was a racist. He was the same guy that had the guy that had putting the electronic prods on black men in these substations. His people were doing it. He knew it was happening. And you had black cops up there going along with it. Now that's wrong. That's wrong. You know, I wouldn't want a promotion because I did something like that, or I tolerated it and wouldn't speak up, and they knew it was going on.
What were the boundaries of your office in Chicago?
In Chicago, I ran the state of Illinois. I ran the state of Wisconsin. I ran all of northern Indiana. I also ran a part of Iowa. Quad Cities was mine. So I had jurisdiction in 4 states.
And
you know what? It might have been 5. I had to go back and count. And I had agents in all those places.
Yeah, that's what I was going to get.
I had agents in all those places.
Yeah. So I don't know if you recall, but I mean, in terms of numbers, agents across a span like that would be how many?
I had an office up in Wisconsin. It was ran by a guy that was a RAC, RAIC, resident agent in charge. That's what he was. I had an office down in Springfield, Illinois. He ran that section. He was a RAC. I had an agent over in Indiana where he just was a guy from the office. He had a road district, but he was in Indiana, and he ran it. And Yeah, northern Indiana up there, right, where the casino was at. I think of the name of that city. And then I had one in Indiana, you know, road district again, you know.
So even at that level of being in charge across the board like that, were you still dealing with issues that were similar to the ones you started out with? I know you mentioned the check situation in Birmingham and D.C., counterfeit money. And,
Oh yeah, yeah. I
you,
mean,
you,
you know,
you still dealt with those.
we had cases, significant cases in Chicago. A lot of counterfeit in Chicago. The counterfeit squad was doing a great job, working a lot of hours. I started a unit up there that started working major cases. I had guys that were on the task force with the FBI working out. I guess it worked out of U.S. Attorney's office over there, but they worked on major stuff also. So I had a lot of guys that were very busy working. Some of them enjoyed the work, some of them might not have enjoyed the work. But if you're an investigator, you generally like work, you know, especially if you got something to do. And then we had a case one night. It was a counterfeit case, but not counterfeit money. It was counterfeit passports that these Chinese women had come into the United States on counterfeit passports, and that it had been identified in Philadelphia. Philadelphia sent us the warrants form and everything and said they thought they were coming to Chicago. We found them. When we found them, they were on the north side of Chicago in a brothel. The brothel was protected by the Chicago Police Department. The brothel had a camera in the ceiling furnished by the FBI. These women, a couple of them were underage. So if they're in there having sex with men and they're underage, or even if they have those counterfeit passports, that's a violation. Well, the passports were our violations. We were surprised to find police officers protecting the building. And we were more surprised to find that there were cameras secreted in the ceiling that belonged to who? The FBI. And who was getting the money every month? The madam. And who was paying her? The FBI. So what kind of intelligence were they gathering on the backs of these young Chinese women? They said they were going to prosecute everybody involved in this. They started bringing attorneys out of Washington, D.C. Then, all of a sudden, it disappeared. It just disappeared. It wasn't a priority for the Justice Department.
You think that was because of where it was located in Midwest America?
No,
Chicago?
not at all. That was politics. Who wanted information from these guys that were going in that house? We didn't. We didn't know who those diplomats might be. And some of them were diplomats from other countries who knew this was the place to go if they wanted that sort of sordid thing. And it disappeared. But the problem was, for me, is that they were upset with me now because we did our job. They were upset with my guy that ran that squad. They were upset for the assistant to the special agent in charge who I had over that unit. They transferred him to Washington State. Then they came after me. You know, now this was like in 1996.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you were there from 92 or 93, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe. Yeah,
93.
93 to 90.
To 98.
98?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So over that period, that's what's that?
I was there 5 or 6 years.
5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Over that period, how
outstanding evaluations every year, glowing every year, and turn into a bad guy at some point at the very end. But why? Because I was doing my job. The president thought I was doing my job, knew me on first name basis, President of the United States. Just, hey, Ralph, you know, we talk. You know, Mrs. Clinton also, you know, because I did a good job. We had the World Cup up there, plus we had the Democratic Convention, put them on the front page of the paper, did a good job in both events, took the President Clinton to the World Cup. He's safe, got him out secure. Brought him. I went and got him personally. He was in Michigan and brought him back to the Democratic Convention. I took helicopters and 2 planes, just me, by myself. I was in one of the helicopters. I was in the one that was called. Well, I was in. The signal for it was Marine One. Even it was Marine Something because it's only Marine One when he's on the plane. Okay, but when I went, it couldn't be that because I was on the helicopter, and then we had another one that was empty to take the rest of the staff that was coming back directly with the president. But I thought that was really something. I never brought planes back and helicopters. I don't think that's the first time that's happened for me. I wanted a helicopter once or a plane once with the vice president, and we went into West Virginia or something. I remember that one time, but this to go get the president, that was interesting stuff. I was the only one on the ride up. It was just me. On the ride down, we had his full detail. We had his staff and everybody coming back on planes and some of them in another helicopter. Yeah, that was kind of interesting stuff. But we had a lot of responsibility. You know, I mean, 4 states, and you're trying to stay on top of all of it. But the one thing that gets you is that you write evaluations for people, especially people who are in your office that are supposed to be doing a good job, like the RACs, Resident Agent in Charge. And I had to write those every year. I had to go and write those evaluations myself. And I would rank them for doing whatever. And for you to write an evaluation of a RAC and tell them that they're not doing their job and no, they shouldn't be promoted, and then they promote them anyway, when you tell them no, that generally doesn't happen to SACs. When you say that, that person probably shouldn't be promoted. I have no animosity. I'm showing them stats. It's the paper. They're not doing the job. They're not getting the job done. They're not turning in stuff on time. And they promoted wait a minute. They didn't really promote this woman. They took my advice that she should not be promoted. That's the bottom answer. But once the board had met, somebody went in the back door to the director and said he wanted her there because she was a woman. And I said, wait a minute. I said she shouldn't be promoted because she's not doing the job, and you want to promote her and put her in my office where I got to deal with her. No, that was wrong. And I've never been his friend since then. I knew the guy. But they told me, the ADs, assistant directors, for all that, they said, no, we gave you the guy you wanted. And I said, well, that's how I was going to run a good office, to get the guy I wanted, because I knew him and I knew he was competent. They gave me somebody who wasn't going to do the job and did not do the job. But then it was on my sheet. I have to deal with it. And it was wrong because he wanted to put a woman in the position. That ain't right. Equality wasn't meant for that. It should have been doing the job. I wouldn't have wanted the guy. I would have wanted her. But I said, no, I want this guy. I know he'll do the job. I needed competent people under me. And not only that, you need the people under you that you can trust. Your back's always open. And of course, I didn't get that in that instant. And it proved very fatal as we went down the line.
So toward the end of your time in Chicago is when the real issues and problems.
Yeah, they sent in a management evaluation. They fudged the numbers. They did everything. Once they fudged the numbers of all the cases and stuff that we were doing, we sent the correct package to Washington, to the Inspector General's office. You know what happened with that package? They're supposed to take it. It's supposed to be a part of the investigation. They, in turn, sent it back to the guy who they knew had sent it in my office and met him secretly at a restaurant and said, oh, they want you to stay out of this. What kind of stuff is that? That's the Inspector General. But the Inspector General for Treasury had been what? He had been a Secret Service agent. That was part of a collusion on their part. He took it back. He had no option. We had it back. We gave it to the attorneys. The attorneys never used it because he refused to come in and take and do the affidavit. So they couldn't introduce it. It wasn't something I prepared. It was what the office prepared. It was the real stats for the office. Wouldn't accept it. Sent it back. They sent a guy who I'd been to school with by the name of Vint. I throw it out there. He did something unheard of in the Secret Service. He plastered over my whole office signs that said, if you ever heard that Grayson did something improper, we want to know, even if it's a rumor. That's what it said on the papers. He put them everywhere. Everywhere. Made me the bad guy. But it wasn't true. And certain people knew it wasn't true, but they had to go on and they did. They followed through with it. It was like an angry mob. You know, they wanted to get all their grievance out. And they did. That was at the end of my tenure there, yeah.
Right. So that would have been close to 99?
97 probably. 97, 98 I left. Okay, I left. 96, 98. But I retired, I think, in 98. So this would have been in 97. And they gave me an option, you know. But, you know, they threaten you. They give you an option. They put me in seclusion in a room down in Washington, D.C. for 8 months. For 8 months away from home. 8 months. In a room. And at first they said, you can't go home. And then every day they come in and ask you to retire. And I said, no, I'm not retiring. And they keep asking you to retire. They send somebody over with a paper for you to sign. I said, I'm not signing anything. They had nothing on me. It was all made up stuff by them. But you throw enough shit on the wall, some of it gonna stick. Or people gonna believe it. Right. And that's what happened. And that's what they did. I was a threat. But why should I be a threat? Just let me keep running my office. They had already written a letter before this investigation started that said I was the best thing since popcorn. Said I was outstanding. Reverend Jesse Jackson took that letter to the Secretary of the Treasury and said, look, leave him alone. Drop down what was written 30 days before when they were going to give me the Presidential Rank Award. The Presidential Rank Award. Or Treasury Rank Award, whatever it was. I was supposed to get it. $10,000. I didn't get it. And Jackson told this guy, but see what happened was, the Reverend Jesse Jackson, I asked him not to go to the Secretary of Treasury. I said, just go to L.J. Byrne, the director of the Secret Service. I said, you can impress him more than I think you're going to impress the Secretary of the Treasury. And so the Secretary of Treasury took it as a personal affront. He personally told them to get me. They told me this. Secretary of Treasury wants us to get you and we better get you. That's what they told me. I said, get me for what? For what? All that stuff y'all made up? That ain't gonna fly. But it did fly eventually because they came in and they told me, they said, if you don't resign or retire, if you not resign, retire, if you don't retire, we're going to take your pension. Don't you think that's wrong for people to talk to you like that? They said, we're going to take your pension if you don't retire. And the director told me that.
So then you retired in 98.
Wait a minute, I wasn't finished with him.
Okay.
I said, I'm going to retire. So an announcement came out for jobs. One of the jobs was DSAC, Deputy SAC, Washington Field Office. It was a 16 like I already was. I applied for it. Wait a minute, I got it. They didn't know I got it. It was on paper, they just didn't pay attention. It said Ralph Grayson, reassigned Washington Field Office DSAC. Oh, they went crazy then. They said, you got to go now. I said, but I just got this job. They said, no, you didn't. You know, see what I'm saying? It was on paper. It was official. I got the job of DSAC of WFO, and they wouldn't honor that, of course. They wanted me gone. And when they threatened to take the retirement, I couldn't afford that for my family. So after 8 months now down there, I said, okay, I'm out. You know, I said, but I don't want to go out without my retirement reception and stuff. And they said, well, you can have that. They said, bring in whoever you want to bring in. So I said, okay. So I was bringing in the former director of the Secret Service to speak on my behest. And he was willing to come. That is until he got the phone call. They said, you can't go. Said, make him get somebody else. And he's still alive. His name is John McGaw. He told me what happened. He said, Ralph, they just mad. I said, yeah, they mad, you know. So I brought in somebody else. But I had it at the finest place they had in Chicago. I had over 500 people there because I was a SAC there for a number of years. I knew everybody. That was my job, to know everybody in the city. And I knew just about everybody in the city. And that's how I went out. When I went out, they still hounded me. We done left Chicago now. They still hounded me.
Right.
I went to the medical examiner's office, the chief of investigations.
That's in Chicago.
Yes, it is.
Right.
For Cook County, 8 million people, at least 35 deaths a night. Some of them we had to sign off on because they didn't have doctors. If you don't have a doctor, you have to have a medical examiner sign off the death certificate. So that wasn't the medical examiner doing. That was my guys that worked for me. I had like 18 of them. They go out and work. It's 8 million people in Cook County at the time. It's less now. Some done died. But I worked that for a year. And then I had an opportunity to go and work for the governor of the state of Illinois, George Ryan. He chose me after interviewing a lot of people to be his senior advisor for public safety for the state of Illinois. And that's the job I had, okay? So that meant I was over the National Guard. I was over the prison system. I was over the fire marshals. I was over a lot of stuff for the state. Senior advisor to the governor. I mean, nobody was above me. Not even those people that ran those organizations. So you know what happened? The first meeting I went to, the very first meeting that I went to representing the governor, you know who was in that meeting?
Who?
The guy that wanted to come back to the Secret Service when he found out I got the job. You know how surprised he was, and then all of a sudden what happened? The Secret Service got involved and started smearing me in the paper and gave a lot of heat to the governor, saying all this I had done. And the governor said, look, Ralph, he said, this is so much horse shit. He said, but I'll have to move you. So I became, what did I become after that? I became the deputy director of all the prisons in the state of Illinois.
Mm-hmm. Department of Corrections.
Department of Corrections. Number 2 guy for policy and other things, with policy.
And that was 2001. Right?
And I stayed there for 4 years, just about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But see, they just kept haranguing me. They sent reporters up to the medical examiner's office saying I stole money. And I said, what are you talking about? They said, we want you to resign. They say you stole money. I said, who wants me to resign? I said, well, we do. I said, because this reporter came up here and told you that? They said, well, we believe her. I said, no, I'm not resigning. I said, if you want me to resign, I said, you need to call Stroger, the president of the county, and tell him that. I said, I'm not going anywhere, and I didn't. And they didn't have the balls to call Stroger. They didn't call Stroger. But it was a lie. The money that they were talking about dealt with golf tournaments in Chicago, I think. I tried to talk to this lady over the years and I asked her why she came up here and did that. She's a famous black reporter for the Chicago Tribune or whatever, the Chicago paper. And she wouldn't talk to me, of course, about it. And who told her that? So we put on a golf tournament. We make $25,000 to give away. Is that correct? Yeah, $25,000 I think we give away. It's either $10,000 or $25,000. I don't hold me to the amount. It was one of the two. So for 2 years straight, I gave it to Boys Club, Boys Town, Irish thing, Boys Town, ran by a priest, Father Smith. I give him the money. He's happy to take the money, you know. It might have been $25,000. But anyway, the third year I started hearing some stuff about Boys Town. And I said, maybe I'm changing directions. Had the tournament again. I gave the money to local charitable organizations for kids and stuff. Gave them that money. They was happy. But everybody in that office was pissed off that that money didn't go to them Catholics at the Boys Town. Next time, I gave that money away again to the local people in Chicago, not to him. They were even more pissed off. We had a Catholic priest who in the office who was in there to help people that were stressed or whatever. But to me, he was just a kind of disheveled fella. You know, he reeked of alcohol. I told him I didn't want to ever see him in my office again. I said, you got no business being here. That was another nail in my coffin. That was okay with me. I just told him don't come back. He had no business hanging around like he had been doing for years around my agents who worked intelligence. It was none of his damn business what they were doing in intelligence. But that always would leak out if you guys sitting in the midst, you know. And so I put him out the office. One of the things that happened when I was gone, they got a big notice that the guy shared with me that came around the office said, we got our priest back. They brought him back into the office, you know, and so be it. But I mean, I got nothing to do with that at that point, you know.
So how long were you at corrections?
I was at corrections for 4 years. They wasn't through coming after me now. I applied to be the U.S. Marshal for the Northern District of Illinois. I should have got it. A lady stood up before I even got to say a word and said, he sued the President of the United States. And I said, what? Yeah, you sued Bill Clinton. It was a black female. Cousins Moore was her name. Something Cousins Moore. That was her name. And I said, lady, I don't know what you're talking about. And then they started asking me questions. Well, how much did you sue him for? This is the board that's evaluating me. There's only 2 guys left to get this job. One from the Chicago Police Department who worked for what? That guy that was a racist? He worked for the guy. And end up, he got the job. But what I'm trying to tell you is that these people on that committee were not supposed to have questions like that. I went to a judge, he said, that was all illegal. He said, you need to go to the senator, who's still the senator from Illinois, and tell him that. I said, no, he's not a bad guy. It wasn't his fault that she was on the panel. I said, she was leaked all that stupid stuff from the police department. I know who did it. The incoming chief. I knew who did it because that was his guy. You know, that was his guy that was trying to get the job also. I didn't get that job, but I got the corrections job. I did it for 4 years, did a good job. I think I did a good job. I think I did a good job for corrections. But at the end of that tenure there, the head of it, he saw an opening to get rid of me because he figured he was going to stay on for the next one as director, but he didn't know that the gentleman who tried to buy Barack Obama's seat, Blowovich, what was his name? Yeah. He called me on the phone and said, Ralph, do you want the job as the director of corrections? He asked me personally. I knew him. He was on a council with me in Chicago. I said, no, I don't want to be the director. I said, I'd like to just keep the job I have and stay there if that's possible with you, if you have it like that. Because I knew he'd probably be the next governor, you know, after Ryan was gone. But when it came around to it, that didn't happen because the director of corrections made sure he got rid of me before Blagojevich came in. But that was okay because you know what happened to him? And some of the rest of the deputy directors of corrections? They all went to prison. The director went to prison, and all these other guys went to prison. They told me to come to the meeting at 8:30, the meeting for the staff. I went at 8:30. You know when they had the meeting? 7:30. You know what they did at the meeting? Passed out that money. Prison Industries makes a lot of money. They were thieves. Mm-hmm. They stole the money. But you know who wasn't involved? Me. I survived it. I didn't even hear a word about it, but I saw them all go to jail. You know who else went to jail? The priest.
The priest.
The priest that I was giving the money to, he was a pedophile. That's what I said. I heard that he might have been having something to do with them kids out there. I didn't give him the money, remember? But they hated me. But when that priest went to jail for being a pedophile, I ain't hear nothing. See what I'm saying? He's a pedophile. It's a mess, ain't it?
It's something. So, Department of Corrections is 2001. 2004, after you left corrections, you formed your own company?
Yeah, Grayson Security Consultants. I worked for a lot of people. I worked for Novartis Pharmaceutical. I also worked for the Chicago Bulls, Chicago White Sox in different matters. And because I knew the owner of the White Sox well, and we were okay. Mr. Reinsdorf, you know. But I learned one valuable lesson in working for Mr. Reinsdorf. A lot of times you cannot depend on others to do your job. Meaning that just because you give a guy an assignment to do something, sometimes you got to follow through yourself. Because any of these ball players are worth millions of dollars, you know. And if somebody screws that up, that's a problem. I learned that, and I learned a valuable lesson from Reinsdorf. Because I had who I thought was a great guy to do the job, and he was. But you can't keep giving the assignment. I give it to him, he asks somebody else, and then we're paying everybody, and that's a problem. And they don't do a good job enough. You get called in on that. And that's what happened with that job. But I still had a great success with Novartis. I worked for them for another, all the way to 2015.
Yeah, 2015 is when you retired. So
Yeah.
how was it, in your estimation, how was it different having your own company versus dealing with the structure of the federal government under service?
You know, with Novartis, until the very end, you know, I could call my own shots, you know, about what I knew what they needed. I knew what it needed to look like. I knew what the thousands of people that would be at some of these meetings with, what they would encounter inside the circumference that I put around them with my security team. And it worked out very well. See, I got with a guy out of upstate New York who had the ability to have the bodies, meaning that he had a lot of corrections officers and police officers who would take leave to come and make money working security for us, okay? And so I helped him choose his name, and that worked out very well. And until it didn't, you know, everything doesn't work right all the time, you know, but I enjoyed that work, really. Once we stopped, they saw what a good job that we did. See, you didn't have any experience in real security, but I did. And I made sure that these things went right, and I held them accountable, you know. I said, you got to do your job. I tell these guys things they shouldn't do, and I said, I'm going to be walking around, don't do it, because I'll be there. And I was, and I'd work a lot of hours doing that over those years. But everything would work well, and people would ask for me to come. When they were having problems, like in New Jersey with a meeting, the ladies would say, can you get Grayson up here? You know, because they figured I would come up and straighten it up, and they were exactly right. I'd come up there, I said, they're going to pay me, and I'd straighten it out for them. I knew what they needed. I knew that they needed somebody that would be assertive on the way we wanted things. If we were paying the hotel for these things, we wanted to have them, you know, and I think I did a fair job for him. Very good job, matter of fact.
So how many employees did you have under the company?
Oh, about 70, 80 guys would be working on a site. Oh, a number of guys. But see, they had that kind of money. That takes money to pay all those guys every day. You know what I mean? And those big pharma companies, they have the money and they want the place secure. But not only that, they want their information secure, their technology, their science and development. They want that. They don't want that getting out the room. And we made sure that didn't happen for them. We ran burn bags and everything. You know, we'd burn it. We made sure we burn it. Or we shred it, one of the two. Call in a big shredder truck and shred everything that was in the rooms. We told them, we don't have trash in this room. If we do, we put it in the can. You know, everything in here is proprietary. We made sure that information got destroyed or whatever. It never left that room.
But your company worked for other companies as well. That was one of the big
We worked for one more. We worked for another one out of San Francisco, where you got a devil in the details. The devil come to bite you, you never know. Well, they told me the guy told me, he said, we know what you did. We know who you are. You can't work here anymore. I said, what did I do? And he was from San Francisco, so I knew exactly what had happened. But I didn't talk to you about the Philippines, so you wouldn't have that basis for that. You know, we had an agent in the Philippines. I got sent to the Philippines to work a case. The case was a golden arm called case in the Philippines. I went there with a task force. I hated the task force. The guy who came out of Hawaii, the number 2 guy, said he'd come to help. He didn't come to help. He came to spy on me. And he assigned somebody to trail me on everything I did there. He was the one that talked to the people in San Francisco about what I did. It wasn't what I did, it was what he did.
This was out of the Los Angeles
He
office?
was out of the Hawaii office.
I know, but when you were in the Los Angeles office.
That was when I was in the Los Angeles office, right? I went there as a task force leader in the Philippines. And what he was doing is we had what we call an impress fund. Impress fund is what you take and pay for information or pay for contraband, and you give it to the people that might surrender it to you. He had a bunch of what we call chits that were in there that were not signed by the person he gave the money to, supposedly. And I said, this can't fly. I said, you got to, is this guy still alive? And he said he was. I said, well, get him in here. He needs to sign these chits, say that he got this money. So the guy came in. It was the guy, they brought the right guy in that said that he'd been the one. So I left them outside the office. He and the guy who worked with him, who was stationed in the Philippines, but he was his boss from Hawaii. But he was the number 2 guy in the office. He wasn't the number 1 guy in the Hawaii office. And so I sat the guy down and I said, I got some chits that I need you to sign. And he saw the amounts he was writing. He said, and he saw how much he was supposed to get. He said, I didn't get no damn money like that. I said, you didn't get this much money? I said, what about this one? He said, no. I said, you didn't, huh? Okay. I said, well, what did you get? He said, they said $1,000. He said, I got $100. I said, okay, no problem. So I called the guy, the boss, back in Hawaii. And I said, listen, we got a problem. Well, actually, you got a problem, not me, you the boss. I said, the informant came in and said he didn't receive that money. He said he got $100. You guys have said he got thousands. He said, what? I said, yeah. I said, so what you gonna do? He said, I handle it. He didn't fucking handle it. He didn't handle it. And this guy swore he'd get me. And what he did was just told that guy from that company in San Francisco, since he was the boss of San Francisco at the time, that I'd done something wrong, which is a lie. But he didn't explain it. He didn't tell the truth. But I said, what could have happened? That don't make sense. But then I thought about it and figured it out. It was him. But that was okay because the guy didn't do his job. He should have took care of that. You can't steal that money. And he did.
So basically,
Wasn't for me to get him.
Basically, the private, what is Grayson?
Grayson Security Consultants.
Security consultant. Yeah. Basically, you had 2 big clients, or you had several?
I had no. The Sinelli Group is who I was actually working for. I just brought my expertise and got paid accordingly. And the Sinelli Group made all the money. I didn't. The large amount of money, the big amount of money went to all those guys that were working. I mean, we got $400 a day or $450, I don't know, something like that every day. But the guys were paid well, for working. And the big companies had that money, to include the one from San Francisco, But it didn't bother me so much because I was about ready to stop working anyway. I was almost 70 years old at that time. And
what I want to wrap up with is your participation in Noble, because you helped found the organization.
Yeah, well, Noble, I wasn't a founding member, but I joined in 1974. The founding members probably joined a couple of years before that. But I was a member since when I joined the Secret Service, I became a member in Noble. Yeah. And at some point, I became a regional director with Noble, twice, really. Once I became a regional director in Virginia in a vote where remember the guy that didn't do his job and get the guy for stealing the money, came to me in Virginia and said, well, you can't win this thing. This guy here's going to win it because we supporting him. I said, okay. So they had to vote. You know who won, right? I did. I knew the people. The people knew me. I won the vote. Even though the guy was a popular guy, they knew who I was. That's Grayson. And they knew I'd do the job. So what I did was he said, won't you drop out? I said, I ain't dropping out. I won the election. And I said, I'll keep it. And then I got promoted. And I was going to leave Washington and go to Chicago. So I let everybody know. I said, I'm going to not take that job. The guy that's in Philly right now, I don't care about that. He can have it, regional director. But then I became a regional director in Chicago. And I always was, for years, I was the federal advisor to the president for like 4 or 5 different presidents. They switch presidents every year, Noble does. And I was a 20-year member. So I had that job as federal advisor for a long time, okay? And I could influence votes there too because the Fed section kept getting a lot of people in it. And we could actually influence the vote. If we wanted somebody, we could probably support them and they would win. That's how Johnny Johnson won, because I supported Johnny Johnson out of Birmingham because I knew him from being here. So, but the thing about Noble, National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, is I started 5 chapters. That's unheard of. Somebody start 5 chapters. Why they were regional director? But I did. I started the Northern Illinois chapter. I started the Land of Lincoln chapter. I started the Northern Indiana chapter. I started the Cincinnati chapter. And I want to take credit for Indianapolis, but I ain't sure. I know I went down there, and if I went down there, it seemed like I would have helped. I would sign the papers to start it. That would be 5. It's hard to remember some of that stuff. And they dealt with a lot of racial things for police officers and civilians within law enforcement and trying to help them do better. We also started stuff for kids. How do you deal with police? What should your actions be with a police officer? You know, I'd like to give that to you. You ought to have that here. It's a video. It's something that we produced at Noble, and we showed it to high schoolers and told them how to interact with cops or police officers, what do you want to call them?
I think it may have been 6 years or maybe longer, 8 years ago, but Noble did one of their annual conferences here in Birmingham. And I went. I was invited by a friend who was a police officer at the department. And so I
Was Johnny Johnson the president at the time when they did it?
I think he was. Because I think it's been about 8 years ago.
Yeah, well, that's the chapter I was a part of that chapter for a minute because I joined it because I was here, you know, but they're just reviving that chapter. It's now, I think they got a guy by the name of Mike. Are we still taping? Well, we got a guy named Mike Williams who was former head of the Secret Service. He's a black agent that I think is going to run for the presidency of the Noble chapter here. I'm pretty sure he's going to run. And Jim Brown, former FBI agent here, is also going to run. No, he's not going to run. He's going to help Mr. Williams with his. If he wins, he's going to help him, but he's certainly going to support him. You know, they had to revive it because they ran out of money and people ran out of interest, and so they had to close the chapter down because you can't collect that money for dues and not have a chapter because you get in trouble with the IRS and other people. So he shut it down. He gave all the money was in the bank, and they shut it down. And that was Jim Brown, I think, that shut it down. And I think that Mike Williams is going to run for it. Now, he's a very decent guy. I don't know if you've ever met Mike Williams, but he was a special agent in charge in Birmingham.
Well, so I know that Noble is a national organization.
But it's affiliated in the Caribbean and everywhere. Wherever there are black people, they're at, or they're trying to be at anyway.
And so they have, as an organization, Noble has taken on, like you said, a lot of the discrimination that.
Oh, in law enforcement, for sure. But they get involved in local issues sometimes too, because a lot of things influence youth that causes them to be involved with the Justice Department, and they don't want that, and they try to keep them away from that. I know I give little spiels to guys that I don't know. I just stop and talk to them. It's surprising how they'll stand around and listen, and they do. I mean, if I go on for 30 minutes They'll just listen. I said, I'm trying to help you. I said, pay attention. And we keep talking, and it works out. I know with young people it has about them getting going and seeking employment at stuff that they want to do. I tell them to try to look for places that'll let you have an intern program, and I said they're doing that a lot with youth now. If you guys are computer literate, you can get jobs. They need you. They need help. And a lot of them have listened. Got a little young lady now that's doing echocardiograms. Just because I asked her, why don't you just go and try to do it? And she did. They employed her. Got another one wanted to be a nurse. They've employed her now. You know, you just have to talk to them and tell them that's the only way out of some bad situation that you might get in, and save your money. I tell them that all the time.
Yeah. And Noble's been around for a good 40 some years.
At least.
Yeah.
They've been around since the early 1970s. I'll just say that.
Yeah.
Woo, that is a long time, isn't it?
Yeah, about 40 years.
Yeah.
Well, and that's good. I mean, just in terms of, I didn't know about the organization before I went to the conference.
Oh,
It was
okay.
here. And,
You know, that's the second conference that's been here. I brought one here once before.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Before then, yeah.
Yeah, when I was back in the Secret Service. Yeah, brought my family and everything. It was just homecoming for me. I came back, yeah.
Yeah. So it was really interesting because the night that I did go to the event, there were a number of the officers of the organization, not police officers of the organization.
Yeah, right, the presidents and all the regional vice presidents, yeah.
They spoke.
Parliamentarian and everybody.
They gave, in a couple of cases, they were given history of the organization and how many things they've done, and chapters all around the country and things like that. And I learned a lot just by going.
And even outside the country, don't forget.
Yeah.
Like if you were to go on a trip and go to some of the islands, there's a Noble member there probably. The chief of police probably is a member, and he comes to the annual conference. Yeah, I mean, it was a stepping stone and a growing spurt for anybody that would join. It did nothing but good. Oh, I started the chapter in Cincinnati. I didn't say that. That was another one. I started the Cincinnati chapter. I forgot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. All right.
You know, because I wanted them to get advancements, wanted them to meet other people, wanted to learn various things, and if they join Noble, they get a chance to do that. They do.
Well, I think we could probably finish up on Noble. I think this has been good. And,
Well, that's good. I mean, that's a good place to finish up.
Yeah.
You know, it was a growing lesson for me. I met a lot of quality people. I mean, a lot of quality people. And I met some bad people. You know, they had the sheriff up there that had the election and killed the guy he was running against. And I knew him. I knew both of them. Shot and killed him in his yard.
Where was that?
Georgia.
Oh.
Police, both of them were sheriffs. Shot and killed him because he wanted to keep the job. That's crazy. He done lost the election.
Was that recently?
That was in the 90s, I guess.
No. Okay. I don't remember that one. Yeah, that's something.
Oh, and the thing is, they're black.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so.
If I had to come back, I got more. We done missed a lot of stuff, but that's okay.
I would definitely like to come back, like for you to come back, because I know that I think we've built like a kind of a structure where you could begin to fill the holes in and talk more about in depth and in detail about even just the areas that dealt with specific cities that you were in, the specific positions that you were in within the cities and within the department, you know?
Yes, you talking about in corrections and all that stuff? I mean,
Yeah.
Well, you know, it's hard to recruit black men to go inside the prison to work, but that's where they need to be, because some of the guys that are in there not gonna treat people right, to tell you the truth. And you need quality officers. I've met some quality corrections officers. I've met some that ain't worth 3 nickels though, but you know, I mean, I used to go on death row, you know, and in there and talk to guys. You can't be making no promises you can't keep either, you know.
Right.
You try not to do that. I mean, I told a guy I would try to get him some instruments to play, and I did go out and get him some used instruments to play, but that I remember. But you know, I can't get you out of here. That's for sure. You know, and it's put in a dangerous place. I think John Gotti found that out.
Yeah.
I mean, especially Stateville. That's where he got, well, I guess they say punk slapped, Stateville. They don't play that. They doing 3 life sentences. What you mean to them? You know what I mean? No, them young men don't play that, boy. They just kind of rough. And women, too. I mean, I went to the women's prisons, the juvenile detention, we don't call them prison, detention centers. And all these kids want to do better, but they don't have a shot. They just don't have the environment at home to keep them out of trouble. Yeah. And you want to feel sorry for them, but you do also want them to do better. Mm-hmm. You want to do everything you can do to make them do better if you can. Right. Yeah. And I didn't talk a lot about Tim Halfman, who worked for me in Birmingham. Are we running still?
Yeah, still running.
But I just give him a big shout out. A white agent that I met in New York and treated him poorly, played basketball. And I told you about the wall. You couldn't have that last shot be made at the bucket. You had to shoot a jump shot. And he tried to drive to the rim, and we broke him up a little bit, but that's kind of fun. But he brought me down here and took me to his gym and beat me. Because, he's younger than me, but whatever. But Tim Halfman did a hell of a job for me. I mean, he was a loyal guy, man. Even when I was in Birmingham, he did his job. He actually ran the office. I mean, the SAC's supposed to get out and run the community. Get involved with the mayor, if you got a mayor, the chief, and all the chiefs and stuff, and be able to coordinate stuff if you need it. And the ASAC at that position, as a 14 ASAC, you kind of just run the office. The only coordination that I would maybe do with him is with intelligence cases that dealt with the president. Other than that, he'd take care of the day-to-day stuff. I would have nothing to do with that. But I would know what the agents were doing because I had to be the one to look at that final evaluation to make sure it was the right thing to do. But then I had so much confidence in Tim that I brought him to Chicago. And they didn't know what's my relationship with him. They couldn't figure it out. Well, the relationship was he done a good job, I treated him fairly, and he did his job. That was the relationship. And not only that, he got a chance to see his mother and father, because they lived in Indiana somewhere, somewhere up in there. And then he could still fly home on the weekend sometime and see his family, because they had a direct flight out of Chicago. So it worked out for me, and I think he gave me a year or 2. He might have gave me 2 years, and I don't think he gave me 3. He might have gave me 3, but then he retired after that. And for him, it was a bonus that added money to his retirement, but I can't say nothing but good things about him.
That's great.
But I told him one thing when he got there. I said, we want to concentrate on recruiting minorities, women, Hispanics, Asians, blacks, whatever we can get, but we get them. Boy, he got me loads of them in Chicago. And with me bringing the blacks in and the Hispanics, tensions rose. So I was no good, They didn't want that. They're not Irish Catholic? No. Well, we got a problem with that.
Well, I want to make my trip to Orlando and just to see you at some point in time. But
well, I hope so.
Maybe what we could do is continue over there if you don't come back here. But
whatever you want to do.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Well, whatever you want to do. I mean, I just want this to be successful. Mm-hmm. I want this to be something that my grandkids can see. I don't care if the Secret Service guys see it and get a little pissed off. I don't care. Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter, man. Just you tell the truth,
Yeah.
And I hope that somebody does come and ask me who were the ones beating people up. I tell them. Mm-hmm. I tell them who was beating them up and doing it in a lot of different places, and everybody knew it.
Right.
I was surprised when my buddy up in Westchester told me that when they were coming up there to work an investigation, they asked him to leave the office. Because why? You know what they're going to be doing. You see what I mean? And I don't know why he'd leave. He was a Marine. I mean, it seemed like he saw some of that in Vietnam. I was a little disappointed in him for that. But, it's pressure, man. Yeah. People just want to do the right thing.
Yeah. Well, okay, we're going to wrap it up.
What time is it?
I got to get you to the airport. It's a little bit before 4 o'clock. And your flight leaves around
6:40.
6. Okay, well, we got time, but I'll get you to the airport.
I know.
All right, well, thank you, Mr. Grayson. I really
No,
appreciate
thank
it.
you for inviting me back to straighten this up. And I think I've divulged more today than I certainly did last time.
Yeah. But we still got more
More to
consider.
do.
Yeah, more to do.
There's always work to do. That's amazing.
Yeah, always.
Yeah.
All right, let me see if I can stop this first. And then stop this one.